I think that eventually zero point 0.1 Bitcoin is going to be enough. It's going to change your life. It's going to create generational wealth. And in this video, I want to explain why. Let's get started. I came across this video explaining that zero point 0.1 Bitcoin is not enough. And the main reason why this guy's name is Mitchell. He has content on X. Huge fan of his work. He posts great stuff. But basically, his answer was that the value of all assets that exist today, if half of that value goes into Bitcoin, then one Bitcoin would be worth something like $23 million. And this is the chart that he was referring to, the total global asset value, $1,000 trillion, equities, bonds, money, real estate, art, cars, collectibles, gold. This is outdated, of course. Gold is much higher than this. Gold is actually at 49.1 trillion. Mitchell was saying that all of this value is just going to be halved and put into Bitcoin. So half of it, half of everything is going to go into Bitcoin. So half of real estate, so that would be 185 trillion, half of bonds, so that would be something like 160 trillion, something like that. Half of the money will go into Bitcoin, half of equities will go into Bitcoin, half of art, cars, and collectibles will go into Bitcoin, and half of gold. I don't think that it's going to be this easy. I think it's going to be a lot more complicated than this. And in this video, I want to try to give you my perspective on what I think will happen. And I want to do that by showing you a physics concept called pressure. My analogy here is that a 100-pound woman in stiletto heels exerts 20 times more pressure on the ground than a 6,000-pound elephant. And the reason for this is that the 6,000-pound elephant spreads the weight over 4 wide padded feet, resulting in much lower pressure. So it says approximately 75 pounds per square inch. The 100-pound woman, even though she weighs much less than the elephant weighs something like 6,000 pounds, the woman weighs 100 pounds. What she's doing though is she's concentrating all of that weight on a very small area. So if a woman steps on your foot with stiletto heels, or a man, whoever wants to wear it and try this experiment, it'll probably hurt a lot more than if somebody were to stomp on your feet with their entire foot. And of course, the reason for that is the concentrated force. You can see here a person in heels can exert over 25 times more pressure on a single heel than a 4,000 kilogram elephant does on one foot. So the surface area where that weight is going into is very concentrated with the stiletto heels, whereas with the elephant's foot, it's very large, it's wide, it's padded. And what that means is that the weight will be spread out amongst a much bigger area compared to that stiletto heel that goes straight into your foot. And the reason why I gave you that analogy is you can almost think of all of these different assets as an elephant. So these assets are all different legs of the current financial system. So the current financial system is having this impact on the world. The impact is about $1,000 trillion, so $1 quadrillion. And the reason why it's 1,000 trillion and not more is because all of these assets are taking a different amount of pressure from the financial system. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Let me know in the comments if that makes sense. But the way that I see it, money is supposed to serve 3 different functions. It's supposed to be a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. The way that the current financial system works is that the functions of money are being fulfilled by different assets. So, for example, money, this is, let's say, currencies, dollars, euros, pounds, yen, whatever it is. This fulfills the medium of exchange function. And for some people, it also fulfills the store of value function. But you can also see bonds. Bonds fulfill the short term store of value function. Some people hold bonds for the long term. Pretty stupid if you ask me. But a lot of people buy bonds for the short term because they know that if they have savings and they have some kind of expense coming up in a year, 2 years, 3 years, they know that the money is there and they're getting interest for keeping that money in that bond. So they buy bonds because of that. They use bonds for short term savings. There are, of course, like I said, people who are saving in bonds for long term, but most people are using bonds for short term, I would guess. I think that there are nation states that are buying long term bonds, but people in general buy bonds for the short term. That's just my my way of looking at the world. I don't think people should be buying bonds for the long term. Doesn't really make any sense. But now let's say real estate. Real estate is a long-term store of value. Some people use it as shelter, but other people use it as a savings account. So they want to buy houses and hold them forever because they know that houses are going to rise in value. So this is a long-term store of value. Equities are risky assets that people buy because they think that there's going to be more product being created by a company and that company's value will go up. There are a lot of people who buy equities as a store of value. So you can see here, some people use money as a store of value, other people use bonds as a store of value, other people use real estate as a store of value, other people use equities as a store of value. And then there's people who buy art, cars, and collectibles. Of course, these are also a store of value. We have no real idea how much art, cars, and collectibles are worth. This number could rise massively because somebody bids a huge amount on a certain piece of art for whatever reason. So this could rise significantly. Today, gold is worth $49 trillion. You can see here, $49.1 trillion. And of course, gold is another way to store value for the future. So let's think about that again. All of the functions of money are being dispersed amongst different assets. So gold is being used to fulfill one of the functions of money. Art and collectibles are used to fulfill one of the functions of money. Equities, real estate, bonds, and money. All of these things are fulfilling the store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account functions of money. And the reason why I thought that that elephant analogy would be great is because pressure is being exerted on each of the market caps of all of these assets. So people are buying all of these assets. There are different people who are trying to fulfill a different function of money, and each person has their own opinion of which asset they should buy. I think that in the current financial system, the way that it's set up, equities do compete with real estate. People buy equities to save for the future. It's because the money doesn't work. The people who realize that the financial system is broken, that the money can't work as a savings vehicle, get rid of their money and they buy equities. They buy stocks of companies because they think that the company is going to increase in value over time. Right now, though, people just buy equities because they want to save. They just want to put money into something that they know will increase in value over time. They don't even know which companies they're buying. Let's say, for example, with index funds, most people have no clue which companies are in their index fund. They have no idea. All they know is that over time, they'll get more money back at some point in the future. So each of these asset classes is a different leg of the financial system, and each one is absorbing some of the pressure that comes in from the people who don't want to hold money anymore. They want to get rid of their money. They want to save it in something else that they know won't decrease in value as fast as their money. So if they have long-term goals, they'll buy equities, they'll buy real estate, they'll buy bonds, they'll buy art, cars, and collectibles, or they'll buy gold. The difference between Bitcoin and everything else on this list is that Bitcoin can be used as a store of value, a medium of exchange, and a unit of account. So now, instead of having multiple assets, so instead of having multiple legs like the elephant, all of the pressure is concentrated in one asset. So one asset gets all of the value, and the price of Bitcoin isn't determined based on half of the value of gold, art, collectibles, equities, real estate, bonds, and money. That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what half of the value of those things is because the value of a lot of these assets is purely determined based on them being used as a store of value. Who would buy bonds if they understood that bonds can be created out of nothing? If they knew that they're losing value in real terms compared to the US dollar's inflation rate. Real estate has a lot of downsides that make it so that it's not worth owning real estate as a store of value. So I don't think that this is going to be halved. I think this is going to decrease significantly because the value of properties is going to plummet massively. It's going to plummet because there are a lot of people who own multiple rental properties. They're going to sell those properties, and those properties are going to go into the hands of people who want to buy them to occupy them. And what's the maximum amount of money that the people who can buy them to live in them will pay? They'll pay as little as possible. They're not competing to buy real estate. All they want is shelter. They'll pay whatever they have. On the other hand, if you're thinking of it from the store of value perspective, the person who's buying a house is always going to look at the math. They're going to go to the bank, they're going to borrow money to make a deal work because they can make a profit, a tiny profit on owning that property. So what you see right now is you have bidding wars between different corporations who are willing to pay way more than what a property is worth because they think that over time it'll go up even more. So I would say that 95% of the value of real estate is just store of value. Same thing with bonds. I would say 99% of the value of bonds is just store of value. Nobody would want to hold bonds if they understand what Bitcoin is. They would hold cash, fiat currencies, and they would hold Bitcoin. So you have this $318 trillion worth of value that could potentially concentrate into Bitcoin. All of this value could go into Bitcoin, but it's not just going to go in as $318 trillion at, let's say, $88,000 a coin, $90,000 a coin, whatever the price is right now. It's going to go in at whatever the marginal seller is willing to sell Bitcoin for. So let's say, for example, I think the same thing applies to equities. There are a lot of people who are just dumping money into index funds, and those index funds are pumping the prices of stocks up. And these people are just buying index funds because they think that they're going to go up in price over time. They don't care about the fundamentals of the company. They have no idea what the company does. They just buy these index funds blindly because they have to, they're forced to. If only the people who understood companies and understood how equities work bought stocks, I think that the market cap would decrease significantly. Bitcoin is going to run out at every single price, meaning that the first $1 trillion worth of bonds that go into Bitcoin are going to pay less for that Bitcoin than the second trillion. The second trillion is going to pay less than the third trillion. The third trillion is going to pay less than the fourth trillion, and so on. It's going to keep increasing the price. As more of this money, this $318 trillion goes into Bitcoin, the growth is going to accelerate because Bitcoin's a finite asset. The people who own Bitcoin don't want dollars. And what are you going to get from selling your bonds? You're going to get dollars. And then what do you do to buy Bitcoin? You give away your dollars and you take somebody else's Bitcoin. You have to find somebody who's willing to sell to you for dollars. Of course, there are always going to be people who are willing to sell, but the price of Bitcoin has to keep going up as people move their value from other assets into Bitcoin. And then you have real estate. Real estate's $370 trillion. These two asset classes together are worth almost $700 trillion. $700 trillion. The value of real estate is going to drop massively if people stop using it as a store of value. If they stop speculating on real estate values, the prices of houses are going to drop 95, 99, 98% because the values are propped up by fake money. Real estate prices are propped up by banks who can just print as much money as they want to and then dump them into the real estate market. The banking system is basically designed to create buyers for real estate. So if bonds fall 100%, real estate falls 99%, equities fall something like 70, 80, 90%. I don't know what that percentage will be. I think equities will probably hold their value more than bonds and real estate because bonds can be created out of thin air. So they'll probably lose close to 100%. I think there's going to be very niche bonds that are still available at some point on a Bitcoin standard, maybe Bitcoin backed bonds. I don't know how that would work. But real estate would probably lose 99% of its value because you can literally pay someone to make more real estate for you. Today, the supply of real estate is kept low intentionally. The wealthy know that they can borrow against their houses. If there are fewer houses available, people will want to buy them. They'll pay them for those houses. So the supply of real estate is intentionally kept low to make sure that the market cap of real estate stays high. With technology, 3D printing, prefabricated homes, I think we're going to be able to build a lot more houses much quicker, meaning that the value of real estate is going to drop significantly. I would be surprised if houses keep 1% of their current value in the next 50 to 60 years. Whereas equities take time to build, they take strategy, they take work. Now, keep in mind that this is all proportionately. The price of housing will keep rising in terms of dollars, but Bitcoin will take a bigger and bigger share of the pie of the total amount of wealth in the world. The companies that are backing equities actually produce something of value. But what you're going to see is that there's going to be competition that takes over a lot of the companies that exist today. So companies that are backed by Bitcoin that own Bitcoin are probably going to outcompete every company that doesn't own Bitcoin. And you're going to see that a lot of the companies that exist today are going to just disappear and they're going to fade into irrelevance. I think art, cars, and collectibles may have some value, But when you think about it, a lot of the value here is sentimental. I don't exactly know what would happen here. I think that there will still be value here because you can't really recreate, let's say, the Mona Lisa. I think the Mona Lisa will have some value in terms of Bitcoin. You'll have cars that were created years ago, decades ago, that will retain their value. You'll have collectibles that can't be created out of thin air. Let's say one of one rookie cards, let's say Wayne Gretzky rookie cards, Michael Jordan rookie cards, all those things will still retain their value. But I don't know exactly where this is going to go. I wouldn't be surprised actually if this rises because the people who own Bitcoin may want some art, cars, and collectibles that they otherwise can't access. This is the only asset class that would be more scarce than Bitcoin. So if there's a one of one rookie card and there are 21 million Bitcoin, there are 21 million people who can own one Bitcoin, but there's only one person who can own that rookie card. So who knows? Maybe somebody will be willing to pay one Bitcoin for that rookie card just to get ownership of that card, maybe even 10 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin for that rookie card just to get ownership. Then you have gold and precious metals. I think gold and precious metals are massively overvalued because people are using them as a store of value. They're not even using them as a medium of exchange. A lot of people have no intention of spending their gold. They just hold on to gold because they think that other people are going to want it for them. And I truly think that gold is a greater fool theory. I think that gold is just a placeholder for something like Bitcoin because you can't use gold as money in the digital world. So again, right now we have all of these different assets that are fulfilling the functions of money, whereas on a Bitcoin standard, you have one asset that can do everything. So right now, not everybody wants gold. Not everybody wants art, cars, and collectibles. Not everybody wants equities. Not everybody wants bonds. Not everybody wants real estate because these assets fulfill different functions of money. And each one has different utility for us depending on which function of money we're trying to fulfill. On the other hand, anybody who's trying to fulfill any of the functions of money on a Bitcoin standard would be able to use Bitcoin. So whether you wanted to save for the future or you wanted to use a medium of exchange or you wanted to assign value to something, you could do all of that with Bitcoin. So back to this analogy here, the current financial system has designed almost like an elephant where the value is spread out amongst multiple assets. The Bitcoin network is like high heels. So all of the pressure is concentrated on one asset and that asset can absorb all of the value that comes into it. So again, right now, the reason why, for example, gold isn't worth $1,000 trillion is because gold is competing with all of these other assets to be a store of value. The reason why money isn't $1,000 trillion is because money can't be used as a store of value. So you can't use gold as money. You can't use equities as money. You can't send somebody equities to pay for a good or service. You can't send them bonds to pay for a good or service. You can't send them a house or a brick from a house to pay for a good or service. So that's why we have money. So the functions of money are being spread out between different asset classes. And because of that, all of the pressure isn't concentrated on one asset class. So my point here is that all of the value is going to be concentrated into one asset rather than being split up between 6 assets. The only reason why gold can't reach that level is because gold can't be used as money in the digital economy. Equities can't reach that level because equities are risky and not everybody wants to take a risk. Bonds can't reach that level because a lot of people know that bonds are a scam and they don't want to buy them because they know that bonds can be created out of nothing. Real estate can't reach that level because houses can't be used as money. You can't send somebody a house to pay for something. You can't break down that house into smaller amounts of value to pay for, let's say, an apple. So because none of these assets can be used as money because they can't be used to exchange value, we have to use fiat currencies to fulfill that need. Because the functions of money are spread out amongst multiple assets, the value of each individual asset can't go as high as the value of Bitcoin can go. Because Bitcoin fulfills all of the functions of money, it can go much higher than every other asset because literally everybody on earth can demand Bitcoin. I don't know if my explanation of that made sense. It made sense in my head, but leave a comment down below if you have any questions and I can try to answer them and I can try to clarify anything that I may have said wrong or not clearly enough. With all of that being said, I still think that you should try to get to one Bitcoin because this may be the last opportunity that individuals can still get to one Bitcoin. You may not have that opportunity going forward if Bitcoin's price goes too high. If you found value in that video, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more from me, you can watch this video here where I explain why most wealth is built during bear markets.